She doesn't even belong here. Just look at her, covered in cake." The room erupted in cruel laughter, but as tears blurred her vision, she gripped her phone and whispered, "End the $2 billion deal. Tonight." Hours earlier, Tarrytown glowed beneath soft Hudson Valley moonlight, its historic mansions standing like monuments to a legacy of privilege. A black sedan curved through winding lanes lined with stone walls and towering oaks. Inside sat Naomi Carter, her posture straight, her expression unreadable, though the quiet squeeze she gave her diamond clutch betrayed nerves she would never voice. Naomi was no ordinary guest. At only 41, she stood among the youngest self-made billionaires in America, a titan of tech whose innovations reshaped industries. Yet, as her car slowed before an ivy-wrapped estate hosting tonight's charity gala, an old wound pulsed beneath her poise, the ache of never truly belonging in these glittering circles where her worth was measured by lineage, not legacy. She adjusted her sleek black gown, touched the edge of her pearl earrings, and drew a steadying breath. They don't need to know you're the one signing tomorrow's deal. Tonight you're just another guest. Inside the mansion, chandeliers blazed like captured stars, illuminating golden walls, marble floors, and guests draped in designer fabrics. Crystal laughter filled the hall, polished shoes clinked across marble, and every corner whispered exclusivity. Naomi walked among them, shoulders square, face serene, though her eyes recorded every dismissive glance, every polite half-smile that dissolved once she passed. Across the ballroom, Charlotte Whitmore, heiress to the Whitmore fortune, basked in attention. Draped in emerald silk, hair cascading in practiced waves, Charlotte carried herself with the unshakable entitlement of someone who never once questioned her place in any room. Champagne flute in hand, she whispered sly jokes to her circle of friends, each laugh echoing louder than the last. Charlotte had never noticed Naomi before. Not really. To her, women like Naomi were service providers, silent figures who worked behind the scenes while society's chosen danced at center stage. Charlotte's father had prepared her for power, but not for humility. Naomi caught sight of her. The heiress tilted her head, lips curling faintly, as though amused by some private thought. The brief exchange, Charlotte's eyes brushing Naomi's figure, pausing just long enough to register her presence before moving on with casual dismissal, should have been nothing, but it settled like a splinter beneath Naomi's composure. Servers floated by with silver trays of hors d'oeuvres, strings swelled from a quartet in the corner, and the night pressed on. Naomi conversed politely with executives, investors, and politicians, each interaction laced with hidden barbs, subtle slights, or exaggerated politeness. Her mind kept drifting, to tomorrow's meeting, to signatures that would lock in $2 billion of partnerships, to the legacy she was crafting against every odd. Still, a whisper within warned, "They see your power, but not your place. They'll smile until the mask slips." In the garden beyond the ballroom's French doors, autumn air cooled flushed cheeks. Naomi stepped outside briefly, inhaling crisp air tinged with roses, grounding herself against creeping unease. From inside came another burst of laughter, Charlotte again, her circle orbiting her as though she were gravity itself. Naomi tightened her grip on her clutch. Tonight, she had come only to observe, to move quietly through the opulence without drawing eyes. She had not come to be remembered, yet destiny rarely honored intentions, because inside that glittering ballroom, beneath chandeliers older than her grandmother's childhood, two paths were aligning. One shaped by inheritance, the other by survival. One blind to consequence, the other armored by scars. And before midnight struck, their collision would shatter more than glass. It would expose pride, ignite vengeance, and alter the future of a fortune. Inside the ballroom, the charity auction had reached its peak. Waiters threaded through the crowd with champagne and delicate desserts, while a 6-tier cake stood proudly at the center of a mahogany table. Guests drifted toward it, like moths drawn to sugar and spectacle. Naomi lingered near the back, her eyes tracking the swirl of gowns, tuxedos, and jewels. Every detail reminded her of the distance between her world and theirs. She had built her empire from a cramped studio apartment in Harlem, coding through sleepless nights, fighting for funding, clawing her way through rejection. Yet here, surrounded by generations of wealth, she still felt like an intruder standing on borrowed marble. Charlotte swept across the room, her emerald gown catching every beam of light. Glass raised, smile sharpened, she whispered to a friend, her gaze locked on Naomi. The friend chuckled. Then another. The ripple spread until smirks curved faces Naomi barely knew. Naomi's spine straightened. She knew the look. She had seen it in boardrooms, in classrooms, in restaurants where she was treated as if her money could never be enough to buy belonging. Charlotte's heels clicked deliberately as she neared the cake. A silence began to coil, expectant and hushed, as if the crowd sensed a performance about to unfold. She lifted the silver knife, eyes flicking once more toward Naomi. "Watch this," she whispered, loud enough for the nearest guests to hear. Her hand moved with dramatic flourish, and instead of slicing a graceful piece, Charlotte plunged the knife carelessly into the side, scooping up a chunk of buttercream and sponge. Gasps fluttered, followed by nervous laughter. Naomi froze. She had no idea why her chest constricted, only that something sharp was about to pierce her composure. Charlotte turned, cake in hand, a wicked grin curving her lips. In 3 swift steps, she closed the distance, and then, splat! The sweet, sticky mass smeared across Naomi's face, her gown, her hair. The room erupted. "She doesn't even belong here. Just look at her, covered in cake," Charlotte shouted, her words slicing through the laughter like glass. Every eye turned toward Naomi. Some glittered with mockery, others with pity, but none offered rescue. The sound of laughter swelled until it drowned even the quartet's strings. Naomi's hands trembled as she wiped frosting from her cheeks, her dignity unraveling thread by thread under their gaze. For a moment, she could not breathe. Years of discipline, control, and pride collapsed beneath that single, cruel act. And then something shifted. She reached into her clutch, pulled out her phone, and with fingers steadier than her heart, pressed a single button. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "End the $2 billion deal. Tonight." Across town in a glass tower where her company's legal team awaited instructions, contracts lay unsigned, ready for morning. That single command collapsed months of negotiations, freezing funds, halting mergers, ripping futures apart, all before the laughter in that ballroom even began to fade. Naomi slipped her phone back into her clutch and lifted her chin. Though cake clung to her skin, her eyes held a fire no insult could extinguish. The crowd sensed something but didn't understand. Charlotte smirked, satisfied with her triumph, unaware she had just detonated her father's empire. Naomi walked slowly toward the exit, each step deliberate, heels striking the marble like a gavel sealing judgment. Outside, night air embraced her, cool against sticky frosting. She inhaled deeply, the sting of shame still raw, but fused with a strange calm. The laughter echoing behind her no longer mattered. What mattered was control, and control for the first time that night was hers. And pause for a moment, friend. Imagine standing there, ridiculed, humiliated, yet holding the power to shatter fortunes with a whisper. If stories like this grip you, if they make your chest tighten and your heart race, why not subscribe right now? Don't just watch in silence. Be part of the journey, because every click keeps powerful stories like this alive. Naomi's driver opened the sedan door as she approached, but she lifted her hand, signaling him to wait. Instead of stepping inside, she leaned against the polished black frame, her breathing shallow, her heart drumming beneath frosting-stained silk. From the grand house behind her came fading echoes of laughter, every note pressing deeper into memory. "You shouldn't care. You've faced worse. Keep walking." She repeated those thoughts like armor, but the image refused to fade. Charlotte's grin, the crowd's amusement, the sting of cake pressed against her skin. It replayed again and again, louder each time. Inside the mansion, Charlotte tossed her knife onto the dessert table, shrugging as friends showered her with praise. "That was iconic," one whispered, barely containing laughter. Charlotte smirked, sipping champagne. "Oh, please. She'll forget it tomorrow. People like her. They always do." But a flicker of unease brushed her mind. For a heartbeat, she remembered the sharp, deliberate calm in Naomi's eyes after the humiliation. Not rage, not tears, something else, something colder. She dismissed it quickly. Naomi had looked out of place from the start. Tonight's entertainment would vanish with the last bottle of champagne. Naomi slid into the car finally, her movements precise, controlled. She removed her earrings, dropped them into her clutch, then stared at her reflection in the tinted window. Buttercream clung stubbornly to her lashes, her gown now a ruined mosaic of silk and sugar. Her chest tightened. Why does this hurt more than boardroom battles, she wondered. She had dismantled rivals, absorbed companies, risen above men who swore she'd fail. Yet tonight, a simple act of cruelty pierced deeper than years of corporate warfare, because humiliation wasn't about business, it was personal. The sedan pulled away from the mansion, headlights slicing through winding lanes of Tarrytown. Naomi pressed her hand to her chest, forcing herself to breathe evenly. She told herself she could bury this night beneath meetings, deals, and headlines. She told herself no one's opinion in that ballroom mattered. But every time she closed her eyes, the sound of laughter echoed again. Back inside, Charlotte floated between guests, unconcerned. Her father's associates congratulated her sharp wit, brushing aside murmurs that the stunt had been cruel. She enjoyed the attention too much to notice whispers of discomfort, faces turning away, uneasy eyes trailing toward the door Naomi had left through. One woman whispered, "You might have gone too far." Charlotte rolled her eyes. "Relax. She's lucky I acknowledged her at all. Besides, what could she possibly do?" Naomi's car reached her riverfront penthouse, a sleek tower reflecting city lights against Hudson waters. She stepped out, walking briskly through the lobby, ignoring curious glances from night staff as frosting smeared her gown. Inside her private elevator, she finally exhaled. Forget them, forget her. Tomorrow is business, tomorrow is power. But her chest knew otherwise. Her heart whispered, they stripped something deeper tonight, not just dignity and belonging. She closed her eyes, swallowing the ache, resisting the pull to collapse. Instead, she whispered to herself, stand tall. Resistance. A battle not against Charlotte, but against her own rising tide of shame. And while Naomi fought to smother those wounds, Charlotte reveled in false victory, blind to the storm already set in motion. Morning sunlight spilled across the Hudson, turning river currents into strands of gold. Naomi sat at her glass dining table, untouched coffee cooling beside her laptop. Messages poured in, executives panicked, journalists circling, stockholders demanding answers. Her command last night had detonated like a bomb. She reread the subject lines, merger halted, Whitmore board in crisis, emergency meeting requested. Her phone buzzed again, a text from her assistant. They want to meet immediately, Tarrytown Country Club, noon. Her jaw clenched. Of course they wanted to meet. Of course they'd demand explanations. And of course Charlotte would be there, clinging to power like silk to skin. Naomi closed the laptop, stood and walked toward her closet. If they wanted her presence, they'd receive it. But not in shame. Today she would arrive armored in elegance no insult could pierce. By noon, Naomi's car pulled through iron gates of the country club. White columns stretched skyward, lawns manicured with military precision, fountains tossing water into sunlight. She stepped out in a tailored navy suit, heels clicking against stone with sharp finality. Heads turned immediately, some in awe, others in unease. Inside a private boardroom, tension simmered. The Whitmore patriarch sat at the head of the table, silver hair gleaming, expression thunderous. Around him, advisers whispered urgently. And beside him, Charlotte reclined casually, emerald earrings flashing, though her posture betrayed a twitch of nerves. Naomi entered without hesitation, placing her folder on the polished oak. She didn't sit immediately, letting silence settle like a weight. The elder Whitmore broke first. "Miss Carter, perhaps we can revisit your decision. This merger benefits both companies and—" Naomi lifted a hand. "No." The single word cracked across the table. Eyes widened. Charlotte stiffened. Naomi sat at last, folding her hands with calm precision. Last night was illuminating. I saw exactly how you regard me, how you regard people who don't share your bloodline. You laughed, you mocked, you thought I was powerless. Her gaze landed squarely on Charlotte, who shifted uncomfortably under the weight of it. Charlotte scoffed, though her voice wavered. It was a joke. You're overreacting. Naomi's lips curved faintly, though her eyes remained hard. $2 billion isn't a joke. Generations of legacy aren't a joke. And humiliation is never a joke. The elder Whitmore leaned forward, voice tight. My daughter acted out of line. We'll issue a public apology. Naomi shook her head slowly. This isn't about apology. It's about respect. And last night revealed there is none. Charlotte bristled. So what? You'll ruin us because of cake? Naomi leaned closer, voice low but sharp. Not because of cake. Because of arrogance, because you assumed I didn't belong, because you thought your world was untouchable. You were wrong. The room fell silent. Advisors glanced between the two women, sensing currents far deeper than contracts. Charlotte's face flushed, pride and fear warring in her expression. For the first time, she truly saw Naomi, not as an intruder, but as an equal with power that could dismantle everything. Naomi rose, gathering her folder. This meeting is over. She turned toward the door, heels echoing finality, yet something in Charlotte's chest tightened, a flicker of recognition she couldn't dismiss. The very woman she had mocked now stood as the gatekeeper of her family's future. Naomi returned to her penthouse after the tense meeting, the Hudson stretching wide and silver beneath her windows. She lowered herself into a leather armchair, loosened her collar, and stared at the skyline. Silence pressed against her chest, thick and heavy. Her phone buzzed again. Another headline. Whitmore Industries plunges after merger collapse. Naomi closed the screen, pressing her palms together. The deal hadn't been about money alone, it had been about legacy, about proving that a girl once laughed at for bringing homemade lunches in dented Tupperware could stand at the pinnacle of industries built on centuries of exclusion. Her mind drifted backward, uninvited. She was 10 again, standing in a suburban classroom in upstate New York. Her shoes were second-hand, her braids too tight, her skin a target for whispers. The teacher called on her, and she had answered with a voice steady as stone. Yet laughter filled the room, sharp as knives. She talks funny. She doesn't fit. That laughter had never left her. It grew into fuel, a relentless fire pushing her to achieve, to prove, to conquer. But sometimes, like last night, it still pierced like glass. Naomi exhaled, pressing fingertips against her temples. You vowed no one would ever make you feel small again. And yet Charlotte did. Meanwhile, in the Whitmore estate, Charlotte slammed her bedroom door, emerald earrings clattering against the dresser. She collapsed onto the bed, fists gripping silk sheets. Her father's voice still rang in her ears. You've jeopardized everything. Charlotte hated weakness, hated blame. Yet a sliver of memory surfaced. She was 15, standing in the ballroom of this same house, wearing a gown too long for her frame. A rival heiress had whispered cruelly, You're just a spoiled girl playing dress-up. Laughter had spread like wildfire. That night, Charlotte had sworn she'd humiliate before being humiliated. She'd crafted arrogance like armor, using cruelty as a shield. Now, for the first time, her shield cracked. Naomi's steady defiance haunted her, replaying in sharp detail, the calm command, the unwavering gaze. Charlotte hated it, but beneath hate stirred something else. Recognition. Later that evening, a call arrived for Naomi. Against her instinct, she answered. A hesitant voice came through. Charlotte. Naomi's lips pressed into a line. Why are you calling me? Silence hung, awkward and heavy. Charlotte finally muttered, I wanted to explain. Naomi let out a sharp laugh, void of humor. Explain what? That you thought humiliating me in front of 100 strangers was entertainment. Charlotte's throat tightened. It wasn't supposed to matter. You weren't supposed to matter. The words slipped before she could stop them. Regret clawed instantly at her chest. Naomi's voice cut like steel. Everyone matters. That's the difference between you and me." Charlotte swallowed hard. For the first time in her life, words failed her. The line went dead. Naomi sat in silence afterward, pulse hammering. Her past, Charlotte's arrogance, the entire weight of that night. It all pressed into her chest, forcing a reckoning she hadn't expected. And maybe you feel that sting too, being dismissed, mocked, or underestimated. Think about it. If a story like this resonates with you, yet you're watching without subscribing, doesn't that feel wrong? Don't just take the story and leave. Hit subscribe, because every new supporter proves that voices like Naomi's deserve to be heard. Naomi rose from her chair, walking to the window. Beyond the glittering river, lights flickered across Tarrytown. Somewhere out there, Charlotte wrestled with her own reflection. Both women carried scars, though neither yet knew how deeply those wounds would bind them. 2 days later, Naomi sat in a quiet cafe tucked between brick storefronts on Main Street, Tarrytown. She had chosen it deliberately. No chandeliers, no polished marble, no pretense. Just the earthy scent of roasted beans, the murmur of conversation, and sunlight painting golden streaks across wooden tables. She came here when she needed to think, without the weight of empire pressing on her shoulders. She hadn't expected Charlotte to walk through the door. The heiress hesitated in the entryway, clearly out of place in her designer coat and diamond studs. For a moment, she looked almost lost. Then her gaze landed on Naomi. Naomi stiffened, considering leaving. But something in Charlotte's face stopped her. Not arrogance this time, but uncertainty. Charlotte approached cautiously. "May I sit?" Naomi didn't answer at first. Finally, she gestured to the opposite chair. 5 minutes, no more." Charlotte lowered herself onto the seat, hands clasping nervously. Silence stretched, thick as honey. "I was wrong," Charlotte blurted. Her voice cracked, surprising even herself. "I thought humiliating you would be harmless. I didn't think about what it meant, about what it felt like." Naomi studied her, expression unreadable. "Why are you here, Charlotte? What do you want?" Charlotte's shoulders slumped. "I don't know. Maybe I wanted to see you as more than a symbol. I wanted to see you as a person." Naomi's laugh was soft, weary. "You didn't see me as a person that night." "I know," Charlotte admitted. Her eyes shimmered, though she blinked quickly, refusing to cry in public. "But I saw myself, the worst parts of myself, and I hated it." For the first time, Naomi noticed the fragility beneath Charlotte's polish. She saw a woman shaped by privilege but also trapped by it, clinging to cruelty as protection. Naomi leaned back, crossing her arms. "Do you know why it cuts so deep? Because I've fought my whole life to be seen, to be respected. And in one moment, you reminded me how easily that respect can be stripped away." Charlotte swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." Naomi's lips curved faintly. "You think words are enough?" "No," Charlotte whispered. "But it's all I have right now." Silence again, but softer this time. The cafe's hum wrapped around them like a blanket. A server approached, placing a cappuccino before Naomi and a latte before Charlotte, though Charlotte hadn't ordered. Naomi raised an eyebrow. Charlotte cracked the smallest smile. "Guess they assume I drink lattes." Against her will, Naomi let out a short laugh, not bitter, genuine. For a fleeting second, the ice between them thinned. Charlotte leaned forward. "You don't have to forgive me. You don't have to like me, but maybe you could teach me. Show me how you built something without being handed everything." Naomi's gaze softened, though guarded. "Why would I waste time teaching someone who sees me as a target?" "Because," Charlotte said quietly, "I don't want to be that person anymore." Naomi searched her face, looking for deceit. Instead, she saw something unexpected: sincerity. The bond was fragile, breakable with a single harsh word, but it was there, glimmering faintly in the sunlit cafe, like light breaking through cracks in stone. For the first time, Naomi considered the possibility that this humiliation might birth something unexpected. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps understanding. The faint thread of connection woven inside the cafe unraveled far quicker than it had formed. For a few days, Naomi had allowed Charlotte's apology to linger in her mind, fragile as glass. She even agreed to meet again, this time inside a conference room overlooking the Hudson. It was supposed to be a step forward. Instead, it became a step back into fire. The moment Naomi walked in, she noticed the presence of photographers camped outside the building. Their lenses flashed through glass like vultures circling prey. Naomi's jaw clenched. "You tipped them off, didn't you?" Charlotte looked startled. "What? No, I swear I didn't." But Naomi's trust cracked. "You expect me to believe this is coincidence? After everything, after humiliation, you'd let me be spectacle again?" Charlotte rose, frustration sparking. "I told you I didn't call anyone. Maybe the press just follows me. Did you think of that?" Naomi's voice turned sharp, almost shaking. "I've spent decades keeping my dignity intact. You cost me that once already. I won't let you drag me into headlines now." Charlotte's pride flared. Fear of vulnerability twisted into anger. "And what about me? Do you think it's easy growing up under constant cameras? Do you think I haven't suffered?" Naomi's laugh was bitter. "Suffered? You live in mansions, Charlotte. You were handed everything I bled for." The words struck like whips. Charlotte staggered, face hardening to stone. "Maybe you'll never see me as anything more than spoiled. Maybe I was stupid to think you could." Naomi's voice trembled with restrained fury. "And maybe I was stupid to think you were capable of change." The room fell silent. Only the river outside moved, endless and indifferent. Charlotte grabbed her purse, eyes glistening though no tears fell. "You want the truth? That night when I threw that cake, I felt powerful for the first time in years, and maybe, just maybe, I enjoyed it." Naomi flinched as if struck. The words, cruel and desperate, cut deep. "Then we're done," Naomi whispered. Her voice carried finality sharper than any scream. Charlotte turned, walking toward the exit. She paused at the door, back rigid. For one fleeting moment, her hand trembled as though she might turn around. But pride sealed her spine. She left without looking back. Naomi stood alone in the room, chest heaving. Rage collided with sorrow, leaving her hollow. She pressed her hands against the cool table, feeling the weight of battles she thought she had already won. That night, headlines swirled again. Paparazzi had caught images of Charlotte storming out, Naomi's face grim behind tinted glass. Rumors blossomed. The deal collapse deepens. Personal vendetta. Two powerful women at war. Naomi read the articles in silence, each line pressing heavier than the last. She shut her laptop, whispering to herself, "Why did I even try?" Across town, Charlotte sat curled in her massive bedroom, lights off, phone abandoned. For once, she didn't scroll through comments or stories. She simply stared at the ceiling, hearing Naomi's words on repeat. "You were handed everything I bled for." A single tear slipped down, staining silk sheets. Charlotte brushed it away furiously, as though admitting pain would break her completely. Both women, worlds apart, lay awake that night. Anger burned, pride bristled, but beneath it all was something harder to face, the echo of connection, now shattered. Naomi spent the next morning inside her office overlooking the Hudson, blinds half-drawn, city noise muffled to a distant hum. Papers lay scattered across the mahogany desk, but her eyes refused to focus. She had mastered every battlefield, boardrooms, markets, negotiations. Yet one conversation with Charlotte Whitmore left her shaken like nothing else. She replayed the fight in her mind. The flash of anger, the careless cruelty, the finality of goodbye. Why did I let her in at all, she thought. Why did I let her voice matter? Yet beneath the anger, another truth pulsed stubbornly. She did matter. Charlotte mattered not because of wealth or name, but because in her brokenness, Naomi had glimpsed a mirror of her own past scars. Naomi stood, pacing. She told herself to bury it, to move forward, to leave the Whitmores to drown in their own arrogance. But her chest tightened with a different urge, to fight, not against Charlotte, but for something deeper, for healing, for possibility. Across town, Charlotte sat inside her father's study, untouched brandy on the table, her father's words still ringing, "You've destroyed us." He had stormed out hours ago, leaving silence thick as smoke. Charlotte stared at the flames inside the stone fireplace. She wanted to hate Naomi, to cling to pride, yet every harsh word she had thrown now echoed hollow. The truth was undeniable. Naomi's strength had exposed her weakness, and for once, Charlotte wanted to rise instead of hide. She whispered to the empty room, "What if she never forgives me? What if I ruined the only chance I had to be better?" Her hands trembled. She picked up her phone, thumb hovering above Naomi's number, then pulling back again. Fear twisted through her chest, and fear of rejection, fear of silence. Naomi, meanwhile, sat back at her desk, fingers brushing across her own phone. She stared at the blank screen, the cursor blinking inside a message window she hadn't yet filled. Should I? It felt absurd. Billions rested on her decisions, yet one heiress's apology held her captive. Still, the thought of leaving things unfinished weighed heavier than any contract. She typed, "We can't undo what happened, but maybe we can choose what happens next." Her finger hovered, heart pounding. Then, with a breath, she pressed send. Minutes stretched like hours. Across town, Charlotte's phone buzzed. She froze, then lifted it slowly, eyes scanning Naomi's words. Her throat tightened. For once, she didn't overthink. She typed back, "Tell me when. Tell me where." Naomi's chest lifted with relief and fear all at once. She replied, "Tomorrow 7, the riverfront, Tarrytown." Charlotte exhaled, clutching the phone to her chest. A choice had been made. Pride had been set down, if only for a night. Both women lay awake again, but this time with anticipation rather than bitterness. Tomorrow would decide everything, whether their bond would mend or whether it would break beyond repair. Evening spread soft orange light across the Hudson as Naomi walked toward the riverfront. The September air carried a faint chill, leaves whispering in the breeze. She had chosen this spot deliberately. No chandeliers, no tuxedos, no watchful eyes, just open sky, running water, and the chance to end things without performance. Charlotte stood waiting near the railing, hair pulled back, no diamonds, no silk, only a plain coat and nervous hands twisting together. For the first time, she looked like any other woman searching for words. Naomi stopped a few feet away, studying her in silence. Finally, Charlotte spoke, voice trembling. "I didn't come here to justify anything. I came because I couldn't let the last thing you hear from me be cruelty." Naomi crossed her arms. "And what should I hear instead?" Charlotte's eyes glistened. "That I was wrong. That I hurt you because I didn't know how to face my own reflection, and that I don't want to be that person anymore." Silence hung. The river moved endlessly beneath them. Naomi's chest tightened, memories flashing, laughter in classrooms, humiliation at galas, years of clawing her way into respect. Then she saw Charlotte, not as an heiress, not as an enemy, but as a fractured soul trying to change. Naomi stepped closer. "Do you know what real power looks like?" Charlotte shook her head. "It's not throwing cake in someone's face," Naomi said softly. "It's lifting someone up when the world tries to tear them down." Charlotte's lips trembled. "Then teach me. Show me how to do better." Naomi searched her face for insincerity. Instead, she found sincerity raw enough to stir something unexpected. Compassion. She extended her hand slowly. Charlotte stared at it, hesitant, then placed her own in Naomi's. The contact was tentative, fragile, yet real. Naomi's voice steadied. "You humiliated me in front of strangers. Tonight, you can honor me in front of yourself. That's where change begins." Charlotte nodded, tears finally breaking free. "I will." For a long moment, they stood together in quiet solidarity, the past still painful, but no longer defining. The wound had not vanished, but it had transformed into a scar, and scars told stories of survival. Naomi released her hand, gazing at the horizon. "The deal is gone, but maybe something better remains." Charlotte whispered, "A chance." Naomi allowed the faintest smile. "A chance." The wind lifted, carrying away the last remnants of bitterness. Two women, once divided by cruelty, now stood on common ground, bound not by contracts, but by choice. And here's the truth. How many times have you laughed at someone's pain or looked away when you could have offered kindness? If this story stirs you, if it makes you think twice, don't just click away. Subscribe right now. Because staying silent while taking something valuable, that's no different than those who mocked Naomi. Be better. Stand with her. Naomi turned to leave, heels tapping against stone. Charlotte watched her go, resolve blooming quietly inside her. She had lost billions, but perhaps she had gained something far more valuable, a glimpse of who she could become. Naomi walked into the night, chin high, heart lighter. Her empire remained intact, her dignity restored. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that even through humiliation, redemption was possible. Because sometimes the most unexpected love is not romance at all, but respect, understanding, and the courage to rewrite your story.